There is an amazing story of an entrance exam in which two MCQs were asked in the physiology section. Let's see the MCQs and then we will take the things from there. The tissue that is most sensitive to hypoxia is, and the options given were heart, brain, kidney, liver. Good. The next question was the tissue that is most sensitive to ischemia is, and the options were given heart, brain, kidney, liver. The students were puzzled at first. They thought it may be a typo. Then they thought that by mistake same options have got repeated. Many of them answered same option, and obviously it was wrong. So let's see why there are two different answers to these two MCQs. Okay, the tissue most sensitive to hypoxia is, and the answer is brain or neural tissue. And the tissue that is most sensitive to ischemia, and the answer is heart. It does not mean brain is not sensitive to ischemia, but the most appropriate choice is heart. And why? We will discuss it now. Before we proceed, let's say this discussion is in the context of these two MCQs. That is, we are going to compare the options given and then we will say which one is the most sensitive. That's the point number one. Second, what is the meaning of most sensitive? Most sensitive means that to the given insult, which tissue will be the earliest to get damaged? First to get damaged, maximally damaged, and the earliest to be damaged. And in that sense, now let's see these two questions one by one. First, the hypoxia, which is the first tissue that or earliest to be damaged or most sensitive to hypoxia. Hypoxic insult will be damaging maximally to the neural tissue or the brain. Why? Because oxygen is required for ATP production, and ATPs are absolutely necessary for this champ which is sitting in every tissue of the body, every cell of the body, and that is sodium potassium pump. This champ is present everywhere in every cell membrane, and the sodium potassium pump is an ATPase, so it requires ATPs for its function. Continual ATP production will be necessary, and for ATP production oxygen will be necessary. So no oxygen, no ATPs, no function of the sodium potassium pump. Then the only thing left after that is which tissue is maximally dependent on the function of sodium potassium pump, and the answer is the nerve, the neural tissue, the brain. And therefore brain or neural tissue is most sensitive to hypoxia. Why is that? You must have read that sodium potassium pump contributes about 40% of the total BMR. In every other organ there is basal metabolic rate and basal energy expenditure going on. 40% of the total energy expenditure is by this pump alone. But in the case of neuron, it is as high as 70%. And why is that? Because neuron has only one function to perform: send the impulses. And millions of impulses are going on every minute all over in all the neurons. And after every impulse, everywhere, there has to be the activity of sodium potassium pump. And that means neuronal tissue is maximally dependent on sodium potassium pump, or the sodium potassium pump activity is greatest maximally going on in the neural tissue. And therefore, if there is loss of oxygen, hypoxia, no ATPs, sodium potassium pump stop functioning, and therefore nerves cannot function any further because there is no recharging which is the function of sodium potassium pump in the case of neurons, plus sodium will accumulate then inside the cells, water will be imbibed or water will flow by osmosis, and there will be damage to the cells. So this is the reason why brain or the neural tissue will be most sensitive to hypoxia among the tissues mentioned. We are comparing the tissues and we are saying this one will be the most or the first to be damaged by this particular insult. Now coming to the ischemia. This is even more interesting. Is brain sensitive to ischemia? Yes, of course it is, because ischemia means loss of blood flow, and loss of blood flow means loss of oxygen supply. So why not brain this time? Let's answer this. Okay, as I said, ischemia means loss of blood flow to a particular organ, and therefore loss of oxygen supply plus accumulation of carbon dioxide also, because loss of blood flow means carbon dioxide cannot be washed away. Anyways, let's focus on the oxygen part. There is a concept of O2 utilization coefficient. O2 utilization coefficient, also called as arteriovenous oxygen difference. Look, arteries or arterial blood, every 100 ml of arterial blood carries 20 ml of oxygen approximately. This is the arterial O2 content, 20 ml oxygen in every 100 ml of arterial blood. When it reaches tissues, most of the tissues in the body, under normal conditions of metabolism, basal conditions of metabolism, they extract 5 ml, 5 out of the 20 that came in, and then that means remaining 15 ml goes back in the venous blood. So arteriovenous oxygen difference is 20 minus 15, that is 5, which has gone into the tissues. 5 out of 20 is 25%, and therefore O2 utilization coefficient for most tissues in the body is 25%. For brain, it is slightly higher than that. It is about in the range of 30 to 32%. Means 20 ml oxygen coming in via arterial blood, the neural tissue will extract 7 to 8 ml out of that, 7 ml at the most. Okay, think about the heart. In the heart, if coronary artery brings 20 ml oxygen in every 100 ml of blood, then myocardium, under its normal condition of functioning, basal heart rate and basal functioning, it will extract 15 out of the 20 ml that came in. So 15 out of 20 extracted, 15 ml extracted out of 20, that is 75%. So heart, myocardium, under its basal conditions, extracting 75% of the oxygen coming in. Just compare 25% by other tissues, most other tissues, and 75% by the heart. Now, that means the other tissues have a better oxygen reserve. If suppose they require more oxygen, the other tissues, they can extract 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 as per their requirement. They have a certain amount of oxygen reserve. So that means with the same blood supply, now this is most important part to differentiate between these two. For the same blood flow coming in, if the tissue requires more oxygen, the tissue can extract more oxygen. It does not need an increased blood flow to get extra oxygen. Do you understand this? A tissue extracting 5 ml out of 20 ml, 20 ml is coming in, 5 ml extracted, means the tissue has certain amount of reserve. If it requires more oxygen, it can extract 8, 10, 12, 15 ml with same amount of blood flow coming in. But that's not the case with heart. Heart is already extracting maximum amount of oxygen that is coming to it. I mean, 75% is already being extracted under its routine conditions. So if the oxygen demand of the myocardium increases, then the only way to supply that is by increasing the blood flow. Because with the same amount of blood flow, already heart is extracting maximum oxygen. So if its oxygen need increases further, the only way to meet that demand is to increase the blood flow. Only then the extra oxygen can come in and heart can take out extra oxygen, more oxygen as demanded. That means if the demand increases and if that is not met with the blood flow, then the myocardial cells will suffer, and this suffering will result in the damage, and therefore heart is more prone to ischemic damage. After all, what is ischemia? Lack of blood flow. If there is lack of blood flow, enough oxygen will not be delivered, and that means heart will already suffer. Or if the demand is more and the blood flow is not increased, then also the heart will suffer. So heart is mainly dependent on the blood flow property. More blood flow should be brought in. Or if there is lack of blood flow, oxygen demand was already high, highest in the body. That means heart will be the worst sufferer in the case of ischemia. That is not to suggest that other tissues will not suffer. Brain will not suffer ischemia. Yes, it will. But here we are comparing the other tissues and the heart. And in that sense, most sensitive to ischemia and ischemic insult will be heart. And therefore, that was the answer to the second MCQ.